Welcome. I'm Kinetic Symphony. I hunt down and report on mysterious and weird true stories, from glitches to the paranormal. This is my weekly compilation for the week ending September 13th, 2021. Case file number 274, written by Aristot N. Blood brothers connected by one mind. My best friend and I have always been connected somehow. If he calls me, or opposite, it's over 90% certain I thought of making a call to him. We grew up together and have been best friends for over 40 years now. Unfortunately, we live far from each other now and we only meet like once a year or so. Anyhow, I recently sent him a snap of a candle light with my coffee and a glass of cognac, saying something like, "This is okay, positive," a phrase that is not that common and I don't think I've used before. As soon as I sent the snap, I noticed I had received a snap from him. As I opened it, it was the exact same snap as I had sent him with the same exact phrase, and it was sent at the exact same time as I sent mine to him. It's like, what the hell? I called him and pointed out the coincidence, and he just said, "That's not weird at all. We're blood brothers with one mind." I'm just wondering if anybody else experienced something like this. Case file number 275, written by OKAD748S Alt, Invisible Homeless Man. Today when I woke up, I went to the store because my mom asked me to get some things for the house. I was walking back home with groceries in hand and I saw this homeless man sitting there and begging. The cashier had given me a few quarters as change for a soda I frankly forgot to get. So I dropped a few quarters in his cup and he says the usual thank you and smiles. As I'm on my way back home, my friend calls to see if I would be down to try this new game he bought from Walmart. I said I would love to, so he came to pick me up. When we were walking to his house, I saw the same homeless man on the curb. So I do a friendly wave and he waves back. My friend asked what I was doing. I told him I was waving to the homeless guy over there. He said, "What homeless guy?" I assumed he was messing with me. So when it was time to go home, we had to walk the same way. This time we were walking on the same curb as a homeless guy. I and my friend are talking about his new Xbox game when he straight up steps on this guy's foot. My friend just stepped on his foot and kept walking like it was nothing. And I said, "Hey, you just stepped on this guy's foot." He gave me a look like I was retarded or something, and we walked home where I'm writing this. This event thoroughly confused me, but there's always the chance that he's just messing with me. Note: the homeless man did react to when my friend stepped on his shoe. He kinda winced in pain like he would be stepping on a Lego, but kept doing his thing after that. If you're enjoying this video, consider giving it a like. Now on to the next story. Bonus file, written by Gigabyte XXX. A ding. Again and again and again. This is something that I really can't explain at all. And anytime I tried to look up something similar to my experience, I couldn't find anything. I've told a couple of people about my experience, and some have agreed that it might be something paranormal. I should start by saying that I'm 18, female, and that my parents are divorced, and have been divorced since I was 3. I lived in Texas with my mom until I was 8, and I believe it's when I moved back to California, where I was born, that this experience started happening. I'm not sure when exactly it happened. It honestly could have even started when I was living in Texas, but sometimes in the morning, while I and my mom would get ready, I would hear a very distinct ding sound. It sounded a lot like a bell, but always caught my attention too, and always sounded the same. I assume it would come from my mom's room, since she was the only other person in the house with me. I always thought it was a noise from her dresser, because she had glass plates holding her jewelry and perfume, but I'm not sure if I ever saw her at the dresser whenever I would hear the ding sound. I remember asking her one day about the dinging noise and what in her room made it, and she said nothing in her room made that noise. Like I said, it was something so clear and loud to me, and immediately when I heard it, I recognized it. I just brushed it off because it wasn't every day either and just happened once in the morning. But I really did heavily associate my mom with this bell-like sound. A few years later, my dad and stepmom planned a New Year's trip with their friends to go to Arizona. So basically, they rented a huge house where everyone would stay, and it was mostly for the grown-ups to drink and do whatever, while I and my younger siblings would try to entertain ourselves. I believe I was 14 at this time, but the most important thing to remember is that I'm with my dad and my mom is back in California. I and my siblings shared a room. I and my brother both got single beds in the room, and my sister slept on an air mattress in between us, and the room we were in was connected to the kitchen, and the other rooms were nowhere close to ours. Being a teenager, I was up late on my phone during the night, while my two siblings were fast asleep. I believe it was the first night, but I was doing something on my phone, I can't remember what exactly, and I heard the ding come from somewhere in the house. It did sound pretty far in the house, so I thought maybe someone had the same thing as my mom. But it was dead silent in the house, and most likely everyone was asleep. It was a quick ding, and I didn't put any thought to it. The next night was probably the scariest experience I've ever had. It was around 1 or 2 a.m., and I was on my phone, and probably the only one awake at that hour. I was just minding my business when I heard the ding again, coming from somewhere in the house. Of course, I noticed it, but went back to what I was doing. Then I heard it again, and again, and again. The same ding, sounding the same, and the pause between each ding was the same. I don't remember ever hearing the ding more than once at a time, but the dinging just kept going, and then I realized it was moving. I could hear it coming from somewhere distant in the house and coming closer to where I was. It sounded like it was floating to me, or something was carrying it to me. Now, I should say that the door is wide open to the room I was in, and I froze once I realized it was moving. I had never felt so much fear in my life, and when I heard the dinging entering the kitchen, I hid under the covers and tried to pretend I was asleep. It entered the room, and it was super loud at this point. Granted, I was shaking and terrified, but the dinging never moved from the foot of the bed and stayed there for about 2 minutes, just dinging over and over again. I believe it was watching me. Finally, I heard it leave the room and disappeared into the house, and I fell asleep right after. I should also say, I never heard any footsteps or anything other than the dinging. Just the damn dinging over and over again. I told my parents about it in the morning, but they didn't believe me at all. I haven't heard the dinging again ever since that night, and it's a certain ding that I never heard anywhere else, and hopefully won't ever hear again. I have no idea what it could be. The only conclusion I have is maybe it was something that followed me until I was 14. It couldn't have been connected to my mom, since she wasn't even in Arizona at the time. I sometimes regret not looking up from under the covers or even taking a video so I could have audio of this noise. If anyone has any idea what it could be, please let me know. I can't find anything about it, and I've been curious about this for so long. Thank you for reading, and have a good night, or morning, or afternoon, wherever you are. Bonus file, written by Iswebsty. A feeling, an overwhelming weight on the chest. Something is there. My fiance and I bought a house in July and have been settling in. It's an oldish house built in the 60s, across from a church. The church used to own it at one point, but we're not the last owners. Anyway, my paranormal sensors have always been auditory. I have tons of personal paranormal experiences that involved hearing rather than sensing or seeing, and after a few of my scarier encounters, I've kinda learned how to turn it off and on, and I prefer to keep it off. I've been with my fiance for 4 years, and I'm the spooky loving one. He is largely more logical. This matters because I'm about to recount to you his experience, and I want to make it known that I've never heard him say anything like this in our 4 years together. Nothing too weird has happened in the house so far, except the fire alarms keep going off. There are 2 of them, one in the hallway and one in the back room that's my office, and both of them keep randomly going off. We've replaced the battery, and they're not hooked to the electric in any sort of way, and one still went off the other night as we started some intimate acts. Another slightly weird thing, my dog won't go outside. My dog is used to living on a mountain. He was raised being outside on his own a good amount of time, and he loves being outside. Now it's sincerely a struggle to get him to go outside to the yard every single day. Sometimes I have to physically push him to the door and out the door. Once he's out there, he stares back inside at me, and it takes me ignoring him and leaving the kitchen for him to finally go out into the yard. So, 2 nights ago, my fiance is having indigestion and wakes up in the middle of the night. He has to use the bathroom, so he gets up and starts heading through the kitchen towards the hallway. He suddenly stops and gets an overwhelming feeling of, "Don't go down there." And he says it felt like a huge warning and weight on his chest. He said he felt watched as he turned around. He comes back to bed and lays down. Our room is a bonus room, the previous owners made out of the garage. He lays awake for hours staring at the ajar door of our room, still feeling like he's being watched with the heaviest weight on his chest. He says that at some point, that feeling went away like a sudden whoosh. It just happened and he felt immediately lighter and was able to fall back asleep. The next morning, I let the dogs out. They sleep in our spare bedroom halfway down the hall. Our young and dumb dog comes out right away as she always does, but my dog is laying on the bed, trembling all over. I've only ever seen him like that when there's thunder. He does get up after some coaxing and does his usual resistance to going out, and he's still trembling all over. I checked the weather and we've had no storms, and it was dry outside. Last night as we go to lay down, my fiance says he feels that heavy "I'm being watched" feeling again. I don't feel it at all. Any ideas what this could be? I'm a mental health therapist and will keep an eye on my partner, but there's nothing currently to suggest this is a mental health thing for him. He's also not the type to make things up. I certainly believe his experiences. Edit. It's been maybe 10 minutes since I posted this, and our Roomba has now gone off 3 times in the last minute in the living room. Please charge Roomba. We are still both in bed. My fiance is sleeping now, and I'm in tears because what the fuck? All of our animals are still in the rooms. No one has touched the Roomba. Case file number 276, written by Prior Data 8692. Mushroom lawnmowers and dancing. Quite a day. When I started looking for apartments, I was told to find the most eccentric of characters in either a roommate or a landlord. I got the latter. Barry's a bit of an oddball, but I can never figure out his past, especially since his house I rent my garage apartment through is so nice. The options were, he either was always a hippie and he just stumbled on some money in life by chance, or he's one of those new wave faux hippies who were too young when the summer of love happened. One afternoon, coming home from work, I see him in the front yard riding his lawnmower. Looked like he was just getting started, and he tends to stay on that sweet ride until the whole job is finished. I wave at him and go inside. I still hear the mower running. On weekends, I try to convince a friend to let me crash at their place, just so Barry's lawnmower that sounds like 10,000 angry bees doesn't wake me up so early. But this was odd, because I still heard the lawnmower running and changing direction in the front yard. But then old-timey swing music started playing above my apartment in the main house. My landlord loves to dance and practices constantly, even by himself. The dancing could go on for hours. So the landlord was mowing the lawn while dancing upstairs? He never ever had any guests over, so I was perplexed. Then I looked out my window and saw him picking through herbs and gourmet mushrooms he grows in the backyard. It was him because he was wearing the same outfit I just saw. Thinking maybe he just stopped the mower, I realized I can still hear it, and it was now following a pattern of mowing the side of the house and front yard. The music was also still playing, and I heard his distinct rhythmic footsteps echoing under the band instrumentals. When I asked him about it, he had no idea what I was talking about, while also looking unfazed. He responded by telling me he'd be putting new mulch down that Saturday morning after a round of mowing. How was he in so many places and doing so many things at the same time? Case file number 277, written by Shader 0. A combo of milk, orange juice, and teleportation. The other day, I went to the grocery store and got a new jug of orange juice. I already had one at home, but the orange juice in it was almost gone. When I got home, I started unpacking my bags. I opened the fridge to put in the orange juice, and the old orange juice was on the second shelf of the fridge. I put the orange juice on the top shelf, and then I continued to unpack the grocery bags. About 20 to 30 minutes after I was done unpacking, I went to pour myself a glass of orange juice. The newer orange juice had pulp, and the old one didn't. When I opened the fridge, the old orange juice was on the top shelf. I didn't notice that it was the old one at first, so I took it out and poured myself a glass. The jug emptied fairly quickly, so this confused me. I went back into the fridge and looked for the new orange juice that had pulp. It was completely gone, and on the second shelf, instead of orange juice, there was milk. The thing is, I already had a carton of milk which was on the door shelf. So yes, I got a very large combo glitch. The orange juice disappeared, the other one teleported, and the milk duplicated. This is the first time I've ever had something like this, so it's very strange to me. Case file number 278, written by Forever Adapt, a case of trousers, but one shouldn't exist. Last week, I bought a pair of funky-looking second-hand trousers from a seller on Depop. I've had my eye on them for a long time, as I have a very specific taste for floral trousers with an elasticated waist. So today, a parcel arrived via Hermes. Hooray! My trousers had arrived. They were packaged in a purple bag and wrapped in tissue paper. Upon trying them on, I was a tad disappointed because they were a bit big on me, but nothing a little needle and thread couldn't fix. About an hour later, I received a parcel from Royal Mail, so a different courier from the first, in different color bag packaging, pink. The item inside is also wrapped in tissue paper, similarly to the first. I opened it, and it's the exact same pair of trousers. The only difference is that it's a size smaller than the ones that I had originally purchased and arrived earlier in the day. My first instinct was that the seller had two pairs and accidentally sent both out to me, but I've just heard back from them and they have no idea what has happened either. Does anyone have any rational explanation for this? Because I can't figure out one. Also, important to note, as well as having been sent by different couriers, the mystery one had no return address on it, whereas the one I purchased had one. If anyone knows what happened, please share. Case file number 279, written by FWDE, when a car goes from one model to the next in 5 seconds. So last year, I was working at a customer service role at an insurance company, over the phone work. We got a 20-minute morning break, 30-minute lunch, and a 20-minute afternoon break. During my lunch break one day, I went to sit in my car out in the park and eat my food, to make it easier to have a smoke before going back inside. Plus, then I could listen to music while I eat. Basically, I'm a car enthusiast, and I tend to notice cars and their registration plates in passing. My eyes just sort of automatically go to cars and their plates and take them in by habit. I was walking towards a smoking area and noticed a red Vauxhall Opel Astra 2013 model up ahead, slowly starting to reverse out of a parking space. I go to the smoker's area just behind the wall next to the Astra, which was reversing. I lit up my cigarette and turned around again to face the car, I guess to judge their driving skills, and instead of being a red Astra, it was now a red Audi A1 with the exact same registration plate, backing out of the parking space where the Astra had been not even 5 seconds ago. I watched it drive out of the car park and onto the road in complete shock. I thought about it constantly for the next week, and it started to make me feel sick and question everything in life the more I thought about it. Not really had anything else weird like this happen to me before, and I hope it doesn't, because it really freaked me out. Edit. Extra. Actually, I think it was literally the day after, or a couple days later, not 100% sure, but me and a load of people around me, friends and family, all felt this one particular day felt weird. It was just coming into summer, and the air was really weird, like nothing felt real for the whole day. I messaged a few friends and told them how weird the day feels, and then a few other friends also messaged me saying they feel like today is a really weird day. I think it was around July or August 2020, but I'm just putting that down there to change the air, etc. That happens with a change of season. Never felt that before though. Case notes, file number 279. So I'll just dive in here and say this is probably quantum crossover. It really is the most common glitch outside of losing objects like my tennis balls. You walked from the parking lot just a little bit and the car that you saw morphed. I couldn't say there's any logical explanation to that besides being in a different universe. And then you mentioned that things felt weird after. Although it is strange that your friends also felt weird because they wouldn't have crossed over to the same universe you did. If something big happened in the original universe and multiple people died, they don't jump to the same universe altogether. Or do they? Bonus file, written by Aragawa, when a witch orders a pizza. So I was making a pizza delivery tonight. I live in a rural town. and the last order of the night was to a house I've never been to before. The address was deep in the woods, about 3 miles from the main road. I'm on a rough dirt path when I see a few guys outside a trailer, so I asked if they were the address I was delivering to. They said, "To hell with that place. It's on the road. Good luck." I should have turned around then and there. I find the trailer at the end of the path. Next to it was an abandoned 2-story concrete building that gave off ill vibes. I knock on the door and wait, looking over my shoulder the whole time. A lady finally answered the door, and she had to be about 120 years old or something. She touched my hand. Hers felt colder than ice, and she said, "Such young skin," in a scratchy old lady voice. At this point, I'm already freaked out. I got back to my car to get the hell out of Dodge, but got my phone to get a picture of the building first. My phone's screen starts flickering rapidly, losing connection to the Bluetooth. My car auto-switched to the radio upon losing connection, and the stations were cycling insanely fast. This was faster than manual or auto possibly could go. During the cycling, I heard the most god-awful growling sound my ears have ever heard. At this point, my hair is on end, my heart is racing, and I'm sweating as if I ran a marathon. I hit 80 miles per hour on dirt back to the main road. What the hell did I just experience? Any ideas? Was it a witch's house, a satanic worshiper? If you have any ideas, I'd like to hear them. Thankfully, I'm home now, because that was the most scared I've ever been. And keep in mind, I've been face to face with a mother bear. Case file number 280, written by Harry Taco 2018. When an instinct is so accurate, it defies logic. I'm a police officer who worked for a small town. For context, I'm also married with 1 child. One afternoon, I woke up around 4:50 p.m. to get ready for the night shift. As I was getting ready, I had this strange feeling that something wasn't right. It didn't seem to bother me too much, and I assumed that I was just still hazy from waking up. I finished getting ready and went out to my car to leave for work. I got about a mile or 2 from my house and the strange feeling returned. This time, I had a voice in my head telling me to turn back home and call out. Being that I work for a small agency, I didn't have the luxury of calling out due to us being short-staffed. I continued my way to work, which is about a 15 to 20 minute drive. As I got closer to town, I began having extreme anxiety to the point where my stomach felt like it was in knots. I got to work and met up with my sergeant. I knew that my sergeant was going to leave around 12 a.m. and I would be by myself. I decided to tell him what I was feeling. He shrugged it off and just told me to watch my back. As the night drew on, my anxiety seemed to come and go. It definitely helped talking to my sergeant about it. But as we were in the patrol car talking, I heard a burglary call come in the county for the same road that I live on. Dispatch advised that they were on the phone with a female subject and she was hiding in the bathroom with a gun along with her daughter. I immediately opened the computer and realized it was my address. I frantically called my wife multiple times and I couldn't get in touch with her. I began driving as fast as I could to get home. Thankfully, the deputies got there before I could, and everything seemed to be okay. I eventually got to the house and spoke with my wife about it. She stated that the house alarm went off while she was giving my daughter a bath. But what was strange was that the alarm was for a window break. I honestly didn't even know we had alarms for the windows, and I've never had any alarms for those go off before. It wasn't windy or raining outside either. Part of me wonders if someone may have tried to get in but freaked out when they heard the alarm. Either way, after that occurred, I returned to work and felt much better. Case notes, file number 280. So my gut says here, it's either guardian angel, some entity, maybe an angel, whatever you want to call it, trying to help you, because there was a threat coming and your wife was in danger. You didn't know exactly what it was, but that feeling was there, the knots in your stomach. The other possibility is that, in another universe, this already happened, and you somehow tapped into that knowledge. So not a crossover, but if there's quantum crossover, then that means that our consciousnesses are all connected to each other through the multiverse. So it's not unreasonable to imagine that maybe we can transfer information between them. Maybe these gut instincts we get are at least in part from that information. Case file number 281, written by Zukanukut. When a makeup palette vanishes right before their eyes. I live with my fiance. In our bedroom, he has his side with his PC set up, while I have my side with my PC and vanity desk. One day I was doing my makeup. I have a white desk that helps show everything on it. My makeup palette is a bright hot pink color about the size of a notebook. I put my makeup palette down to do something else on my face. As soon as I reached back for it, it was gone. Strange, I thought. Maybe it fell or I misplaced it. Checked under and the sides of my desk, nothing. My fiance watched me and talked to me the entire time. And somehow, even he questioned where my palette went. He got me the palette as a gift. I couldn't have misplaced a notebook-sized thing when I literally stayed seated the entire time. I didn't have time to worry about it, so I just carried on with my day. During the day, I found a nice cabinet I wanted to transform into my art supply/makeup vanity. I built that thing and started organizing all my stuff. I just could not for the life of me find my dang palette. I've turned my room upside down and it's still not to be seen or heard from. Recently, we were told to pack up our stuff for fumigation. Somehow, even with me combing through and packing my entire house, it's still not to be seen. I've checked my photos from that day to make sure I wasn't imagining using it. All of my pictures showed that I had a certain palette. Rest in peace to my brand new palette I only got to use once. Bonus file, written by Perpetual Goat Noises. The cold void draining all heat from my body. When I was 7, I'm 22 now, I had some sort of experience. I was sleeping and I remember something jolting me awake from a dead sleep. I looked around to see what woke me up, and there was a man standing in my doorway. He was around 6 feet tall based on the door frame, and had an average to slim build. However, he was made entirely of energy. His figure was made from TV static. I remember being scared and hiding under my blankets, but every time I would look up, he would be closer. This happened several times until I felt him standing at the foot of my bed. Then he touched my foot. I do not have words to tell you how cold that touch was. My foot went numb immediately, as if it felt the actual void was removing the heat from my body. Then he disappeared. Edit. For those saying sleep paralysis, I could move, and I did, during the encounter. I also have no history of sleep paralysis whatsoever. Bonus file, written by Social T100. A shadow figure with incredible abilities. I am a 100% science-based skeptic who experienced something I can't explain at my office in late May of this year. Due to the pandemic, my office building that normally accommodates 1,000 employees has largely been empty save for reduced security teams, maintenance personnel, cleaning staff, and a handful of mission-critical employees, of which I am one. On May 28th at 1:10 p.m., I was sitting at my desk, the lone employee at the far end of one of many large, empty, cubicle city-style suites. Despite the emptiness, the fluorescent lighting and outer wall windows provided a comforting brightness. The creepiness factor is supplied by the multiple of small whiteboards hanging outside cubicle entrances, all marked with the same date, March 16, 2020, the day of evacuation. On this particular day, I was reading emails when I heard very distinct heavy footsteps in an almost jogging gait approaching my cubicle entrance and stopped abruptly. I looked up expecting to see a maintenance person. Instead, there was no one there. The sound I experienced did not match what I was not seeing. I jumped up to catch the person, thinking they turned quickly to exit the suite after not realizing I was sitting there. I looked down the aisle and saw no one, so I walked towards the exit. Suddenly there was noise coming from the print room a few feet ahead of me. It sounded as though someone carrying a heavy box was having trouble lifting it onto the counter and hit the massive network printer and overhead cupboards in their attempt. I approached the doorway to the print room, ready to say hello and offer my assistance. When I got to the doorway with a smile on my face, yay, other people, I very quickly realized the room was empty, and this was a second instance of sound not matching visuals in less than a minute. I was certain at that moment that I needed assistance from security, so I backed away from the printer room entrance and turned to leave. As I approached the cross-section of 2 aisles, I noticed something unusual. There was a post extending from the corner of a cubicle to the ceiling, an approximate height of 10 feet. This would not normally grab my attention, except that there are no posts in that configuration on any corner cubicles in the suite. The unusual post was not solid like the others and seemed to be composed of a density of moving holographic grayscale pixelated matter. I felt a little trepidation, but I also remembered thinking, whatever this is, it's pretending to be a post and was hoping I didn't notice. At that moment, and almost as if it acknowledged it had been discovered, the tall rectangular shape transformed in motion, or morphed, to what I can only describe as the side profile of a tall hooded figure whose frame commenced 6 inches from the ceiling and continued to the floor. Again, moving holographic pixelation of various degrees of grayscale. This included a bent elbow and curvature of the spine similar to humans, except that at approximately thigh level, the pixelation became sparse and much more translucent, to the point that I could see the pattern of the carpet through the lower body. The figure remained in a static position and profile. The pronounced curvature of the cut of the hood at the neck and the extension of it in a perpendicular gravity-defying nature, lack of drape, held my attention. I immediately thought, it's projecting an image of something that would frighten humans. It's trying to look like the Grim Reaper, but they're probably not familiar with gravity, or their jawbone is very box-like. I know, I'm analytical that way. As soon as I processed the thought, the apparition glided forward into complete invisibility. I exited the suite and immediately reported it to security. I have since moved my equipment to a suite where 2 other employees work. There have been no other sightings since, although in recounting my experience, another on-site employee described having a similar sighting in the early days of the pandemic. They saw an extremely tall figure move quickly into invisibility as it came through a wall, crossed the hallway, and glided into the opposite wall. I have Googled similar extremely tall hooded figure experiences, and did find some reference to a common theme of this type of apparition, cited in abandoned buildings, usually hospitals and other buildings used in health-related fields. This checks all my boxes. FYI, it's not that I don't get frightened easily, or that I somehow forgot the existence of an emergency exit right across from my cubicle. I just never felt threatened at any point, despite not knowing their capabilities beyond projection of moving images and sound. I definitely remember feeling completely fascinated during the experience. Fascination level 150%, fear level 30%, anxiety level 10%, and now I feel compelled to find out who or what they are, and if that feeling was just me being me, or if it was projected onto me as a defense mechanism, for either party's sake. I will admit that this experience consumed me at first, and I have since grown to roll with it, and yes, I was back at work the next day. I am not at liberty to disclose my location, my employer, and other identifiers. Has anyone encountered something similar? Does this sound like it may be a shapeshifter or something similar to what has been witnessed on Skinwalker Ranch? Bonus file, written by Wyatt Youthman123YT. A shadow figure in his dream, but leaving a red handprint on his stomach. I have told this story to almost all my friends. I'm not making it up. When I was around 4 or 5, I was getting tucked in. There was this closet to my right. It was a sliding closet door and could be opened effortlessly. After my parents went to bed, I closed my eyes and attempted to start drifting. After around 5 minutes, I hear a rattling to my right and I jolt up. Now I believe I was awake, and I would soon be proved wrong. I got up out of my sheets, stood up, went over to my closet, and when I did, the noise stopped. For a second I thought, maybe I should go back to sleep, but I was determined to find out what this noise was in my closet. I never have been the "there's a monster in my closet" type of kid, but after this I sure looked at my closet differently. I slowly began to open the closet door. Halfway through fully opening it, a loud screech screamed back and forth through my left and right ear, alternating quickly. I covered my ears, and then the ringing stopped. I looked back up and saw what I can only describe as 2 flickering red eyes floating there, slowly fading in and out of existence. Now I'm pretty fucking thankful I already went to the restroom, because I would have pissed myself right there and then. After a second of sitting there, barely holding back tears thanks to adrenaline, and everything seemed to have stopped, I was shoved to my bed by unknown forces, and it began to wrap the blankets around me so tightly that I couldn't move. the blankets loosened and I began to throw them off, and when they were off, I had full intent to run to my parents' room. However, after getting the sheets off, I looked at my door and saw a shadow figure standing next to it, glowing red eyes fixated on me. Now, being a kid, I screamed. If I couldn't go to my parents, they would come to me. But after I did, the shadow mimicked the scream in its creepy manner, and it slapped me full on my stomach. I woke up with a furious jolt. I thought it was just a nightmare, all in my head. However, I noticed a burning sensation on my stomach and lifted up my shirt to see a bright red hand mark. No doubt it was. I screamed once more, and I heard my parents practically kick the door down and run into my room. They all saw it, the hand mark, and we still talk about it to this day, with no clue about who or what it was. I have slowly pieced more info about my old home's history and deaths together, and I would be happy to share the information, just not now. Thank you for reading. This was painful to type, mentally and physically. Case file number 282, written by Admiral Action 859. It's a birthday, but elevators are included. You know what that means. Glitch time. It was my 18th birthday, and me and about 15 plus friends of mine had all just come back to my apartment building from a birthday dinner they had for me at TGI Fridays. The apartment building I grew up in is a tall building with only 2 elevators and 2 staircases. I lived on the 11th floor. Sometimes, me and my friends or family of my age would race elevators for fun as kids if we happened to have both elevators arrive at our floor at the same time. This was the case that night. Both elevators got to the lobby at the same time, and me and my friends packed into both elevators and hit the door close buttons at the same time. I heard the usual tone of the doors closing on both elevators, and they both closed within a split second of each other. There were only about 7 or 8 of us packed into each elevator, but I was the only one in my elevator that lived in the building and knew the ins and outs of racing elevators for fun. I knew that both elevators were equal in speed and were fairly quick. It took maybe 10 seconds to get from the ground floor to my floor, the 11th floor. There was not a chance in hell that anyone could scale the 11 flights of stairs quicker than that. I also knew that when both elevators were traveling in the same direction, me and my friends would be able to yell at each other through the elevator shaft and talk to each other in transit, as long as the elevators left at the same time and went in the same direction, which they did. Me and my rowdy teenage friends were all laughing and shouting to each other from elevator to elevator, but about halfway up, the other elevator sounded more drowned out, like speaking into a fan, and then we stopped hearing them altogether. The way my old apartment building was designed, the elevators are in the very center of each floor, and each floor is just a long, single rectangular hallway. My apartment was at the far corner of the building, as far as can be away from the staircases and elevators. When my elevator opened with my friends in it, I was ready to make a mad dash towards my apartment door, hopefully just beating out the other elevator door as it should have been opening, with just enough time for me and my friends in my elevator to get a head start and win the race to my apartment. Instead, we all flew out of our elevator to see no one else coming out of the other elevator. We didn't hear it open. We didn't hear several loud teenagers jump out like I had expected. It was as if the other elevator wasn't even used at the same time we used ours, and our friends were nowhere to be found. I knew the timing of these elevators perfectly. I had grown up in this building since I was a toddler, and had taken these ups and downs and raced friends and neighbors with them my whole life. I found it really odd that the elevators didn't open up at the same time. I also thought that maybe the other one just stopped on another floor between the lobby and the 11th floor, which of course was a common thing to have happened, and would have been good news since that would have meant we definitely won the elevator race. My elevator went as fast as it possibly could have gone, going straight from the lobby to the 11th floor. We all made our way down the hallway and into my apartment, and found that my family and neighbors, very sweet of them, had decorated the apartment with pictures of my friends and I, and surprised me with a cake. The strangest part is that this whole surprise ensemble included all of my friends who were in the other elevator that went missing in action. It was winter, and they all already had their jackets off and had thrown them onto my bed in my bedroom, and all looked as if they had already been hanging out inside the apartment for at least a few minutes. It made absolutely no sense. Both elevators left the lobby within the same second, and should have taken the exact same 10 seconds or so to reach my floor. But somehow, They had clearly got to my apartment minutes ago. I asked my friends in the other elevator how they got up there so fast, and I just got a confused reaction from everyone, including my friends that were in my elevator too. I was the only one who was left scratching my head as to how everyone inside the other elevator seemed to teleport straight into my apartment somehow. Super freaking weird. I just shrugged off the experience as best as I could at the moment, although it still has me wondering to this day how that happened. I'm a longtime reader of Glitch in the Matrix, and this memory always comes to mind when I start reading the latest posts. Case file number 283, written by Helen Heels 33. A random storm on a pasture, and nothing makes sense. Fully aware I may sound like a wackadoodle, but we're gonna roll with it. I live on a small farm and have 2 horses and a mini horse. My mini horse is an arse, and occasionally would escape. So a year ago, had put an extra line in the pasture, and that's kept him in, even when the fence isn't turned on. Electric fence. I haven't had an issue since. Cue this morning. I let the dog out and did a horse check. The horses are in the pasture currently, furthest away from the house, and I couldn't see my tiny horse. I ran back inside and grabbed my boots. The grass is tallish, 5 inches maybe, and even when I was almost at the pasture, I couldn't see him. I blinked, and he popped up, seemingly out of nowhere. Weird, but whatever. He could have been sleeping laid out on his side, which he will do in the morning. Walked back to the house and plugged in the electric fence just in case. Took a shower, looked outside, and he's gone again. Now he's on the road. He's never left the immediate property. I scrambled to put my clothes on and go grab him and drag him back in. No idea how he got out, no pulls or breaks in the fence. I knew it might rain today, so I moved some plants. It barely drizzled. About an hour later, winds came up hard, all of a sudden. Winds are straight up whipping. Hearing the unmistakable sounds of a tornado, I grab the dog and bolt to the closet. Lasts for maybe 2 minutes. The house is vibrating for the first time ever. So I thought I may just be tired and crazy, but it flipped my 15-foot pool. That pool hasn't moved through hurricanes or tropical storms, but this time it straight up flipped and did a 180 upside down. I have friends who live 1 mile to the east and half a mile to the west. None of them heard or saw a thing, but both report intense storms during the same time. Seems odd that somehow my little few houses would be missed. Just a weird day, and I'm a bit shaken. Case file number 284, written by Nanny Wise. With audio comes control over time. So, a few years ago, I was really into these weird internet things called subliminal audios. Basically, these things could supposedly give you anything from a pretty face to telekinesis, and I was really depressed at the time, so I fell really hard for these things. Don't judge me. Anywho, so I was listening to this one that was supposed to give you chronokinesis, which is control over time. At some point during the year, my family was going on a car trip to somewhere in Wyoming, and it began to storm really hard on the way back. There was thunder, lightning, and the rain was hitting the windows super loudly. In addition, my whole family was talking in the car. I remember this part vividly, but for just like 2 seconds, it was like everything stopped. The rain, the thunder, the talking, everything. There was no bridge, no building, no shelter, nothing. It was just like everything stopped. And then, just as suddenly, it all started back up again. This moment was so distinct to me because I had thought this was a subliminal audio I was listening to, giving me control over time. But as the years went by, I realized this moment is a lot harder to explain. Anywho, that's my story. Case file number 285, written by No More Cake for You, a neighborhood frozen in time. Sometimes I'll be in the car or taking a walk when I see people just completely frozen. Nothing else around them freezes, just them. Sometimes they're walking their dogs. Sometimes they water their garden, but they're frozen. It happens maybe twice a month. Like a few weeks ago, I was in the car and I looked over and saw this dude just standing there with his dog. Neither he nor the dog moved. He stood there for a good 30+ minutes because he was still there when I came back from the fast food run. And a few weeks before that, I saw 4 people having a conversation where they were facing each other and one person's mouth was open like they were speaking, but no sound was coming out and they were all eerily still. Case file number 286, written by OK Thank You, on the fringe of entertainment. A few months ago, I introduced my roommate to the show Fringe. I'd purchased the complete DVD box set several years prior because it's one of my favorite series. We were watching it some way through the first season when the disc tray on the DVD player stopped working, and we ended up just leaving it in. A few weeks ago, I was moving out. As I was going around the house to collect my things, I made a point to pry the tray open to get that disc from the player. When I got it open, it wasn't a Fringe disc at all. It was an SNL Best Of type disc that I have a vague memory of watching with my roommate, but was nearly certain that it wasn't the last disc we played. Regardless, I spot some loose Fringe discs on the display shelf and put them in a box. Now I'm at my new place, unpacking. I have the box set out and I figured I'd put those loose discs back in their place. Only problem is that now I have two discs that are of the same season. Season 1, Disc 7. Those two loose discs are the same. All other discs are accounted for, 5 seasons. I tried to rationalize. I lent out that season to a couple of family members years ago who had never heard of the show, and it'd be very unlikely that they'd have an extra copy of this specific disc, the one I was sure had gotten stuck in the DVD player. I've watched this box set several times over the years, and I've never had an extra disc. I definitely had a what the hell moment, wondering if this is some divine intervention. If this is a sign, which disc do I watch?